Good evening. This is a public hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals. The zoning ordinance empowers us to hear references from City Council, petitions from other parties for variances and special uses, and appeals from the decisions of the zoning administrator. We hear testimony from those in attendance and then make formal findings of fact based on the evidence presented, which consists of testimony and exhibits, and on our knowledge of the community. We then either make a determination or recommendation to the City Council. Testimony will be under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence and procedures, we ask that you keep your testimony relevant to the proposal as it relates to the standards contained in the zoning ordinance. When you testify, please state your name and address for the record and print your name on the sign-in sheet provided outside the door. Each case will be introduced by staff and a list of documents will be read into the record. Then the applicant will give an explanation of the proposal. After that, those who wish to testify as either proponents or opponents of the case will have the chance to do so, and then the applicant will have a chance to respond. Any case not concluded at tonight's hearing will be continued to our next meeting. Melissa, please call the roll.
Mary McCauley,
Here.
Mary Beth Burns, Scott Gingold,
Present.
Violetta Cullen,
Present.
Lisa Deacon, Mirna Aravallo,
Here.
Kirill Miranchev.
Here.
Has everyone had a chance to read the meeting minutes of June 6, 2017? Can I have a motion of approval?
I move we approve the minutes from the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there any old business? Melissa?
No.
Okay. Then I will move on to swear in anyone who plans to give testimony in any of the cases scheduled for tonight. Please raise your right hand if you plan on giving testimony. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you will provide in connection with this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. First case, 818 Lake Street.
Charles Davidson, project manager, applies for major zoning relief to raise the roof of an existing one-story commercial building and add a second-story mezzanine level in the C2 commercial district. The applicant requests a 0-foot front yard setback where 5 feet is required, zoning code section 610-47A, a 0-foot west interior side yard setback where 15 feet is required, zoning code section 610-47C, and a 0-foot street side yard setback where 5 feet is required, zoning code section 610-47B. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include variation application submitted May 11th, 2017, standards form, zoning analysis, plat of survey, site plans, elevations and renderings, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, and Dapper meeting minutes excerpt of May 3rd, May 17th, and May 31st, 2017.
Before you begin, sir, I have to ask if any of our members need to recuse themselves from testimony.
Yeah, I need to recuse myself. This is a project that is designed in our company, so I'll step down.
Thank you.
Ready to go?
Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Charles Davidson, 1428 Noyes, Evanston, Illinois. I'm the project manager, development manager for the project. I have with me Lee Katz and Danny Blyer, the property owners. The property before you, formerly the Allegretti Rug Store at 818 Lake Street, has operated since 1970. The existing building on the property has a 5,000 square foot single-story facility. It's a brick building built to the property line on the front and both side yards. The rear of the building has a service garage with a setback along the east line at what is Sherman Avenue, not the main Sherman Avenue, but more of a side lot Sherman Avenue. The property is bordered by Lake Street to the north. Lake Street on this neighborhood, Lake Street on this block consists of the Metropolitan Pumping Station across the street, the police station on the corner of Elmwood to the west. To the west, we have the Living Hope Calvary Church, which continues until Lake Elmwood, and then we have a few homes that border our property on the rear. To the east of the property, we have Sherman Avenue and the L and Metro tracks.
Charlie, in terms of the
Go ahead,
setbacks
Scott.
you're requesting, they are the existing footprint, right? So you're
that's
just
correct.
building straight up from the current footprint of the building.
That's correct. And so if you want to look at this slide, between columns A and B on the right-hand side of the building, that's the existing footprint. Those parapets we are raising to match the parapet height that goes from column lines B to G. It just happens that they're a little bit, the way the building's set up, it's a little bit shorter in the front. The 18 inches is the difference. And so if you want, I'll kind of walk you through the plans and kind of give you a little bit of a background to it. So again, that's the front facade as it is today in the upper left-hand photograph. The lower left-hand photograph is the garage in the back. We're not doing any work to the garage. We're going to do some restoration work on the exterior painting, but we don't have any plans to do any renovation work for the garage. This is the existing footprint as it is today. Like we stated, we'll gut the interior. But the request before you really affects what's happening between column lines A and B on the right-hand side. This is a layout of the proposed office space. It's a co-work facility that we're proposing to construct here. Kind of a mix of closed offices, open offices, a lot of natural light and open space. This is the roof plan, kind of giving you an outline. Part of this, our permit plans will be to construct a skylight down the middle, which is the large bar in the middle there, and then have a open sunroom recreation space on the top floor, which we're not planning any desks up there, but it's more of a gathering space for the facility with a stair that goes up to it. For you is the front and rear elevations. On the upper left-hand side, you can see what we're doing with the roof. We're going to be taking the existing building down to, and then bringing up a new facade, and a facade that more aligns with the rest of the east and west side of the buildings south of B line. The parapets between A and B will reconstruct up to that same line. And some of that is, the laser's not working, so a lot of that you can see on the plan, the profile drawings below. The photograph to the upper right, that's the rear of the building, and that's the sunroom capturing this southern elevation. And the existing garage is the blue building at the bottom of that photograph.
Can I ask a quick question? So the box that overhangs the sidewalk by 3 feet, the glass box that makes part of the front facade.
Correct, the upper right-hand
That
side.
is only part of essentially the clerestory, the light, the natural light that's coming through. So that just makes part of it, the atrium effect. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Kind of an entrance effect with the natural light above and giving a little bit more of an open atrium. And we're going to carry that all the way through.
Right.
I have a question. The residential building that's directly to the west of it, is it occupied? That you know of?
It's part of the church property,
Is it? Okay.
and yes, it's occupied. There is a residential building would probably have a Lake Street address, or maybe it's a part of it is part of the church property,
Okay.
right? And it is occupied. There's a family. Huh?
Separate from the church.
It's a separate.
The church owns it, but it's not part of it, doesn't.
It's owned by the church. It's under the church parcel.
Sir, I'm going to ask you to come up and take the microphone if you're going to speak from the audience, or come up and do your testimony right after Mr. David is finished. Thank you.
want to just get through the slides for you. So on the upper photograph, we have the east elevation. Currently, there's smaller glass block windows like you see in the rear of the building. We're going to open it up and provide glass, more natural light facing Sherman Avenue and the Metro L stop. On the east side, on the west side rather, we really don't have anything going on. We don't have the ability there with the setback. You can kind of see, if you look at the lower left, you can kind of see the line of the existing parapet remaining. That's really what we're asking for today, is to raise that parapet up. On the west elevation, you can kind of see the faint line on the west side. That's kind of where we're bringing that up. And as well, raising the front parapet height. More of a perspective of the office space, a cut through of the rooftop. A little bit better perspective of the front facade. So again, with the application, the footprint of the building's not changing, it's just the height of the building. So kind of walk you through, the interior of the building will consist of about 40 desks. The space will be designed for a co-work facility. It'll be broken out to have private offices, conference rooms, open office space, break rooms, some additional amenity space. The intent is to have a very open space with a lot of natural light. The second floor addition with the skylight will increase the window sizes to help contribute to the design intent. For this project, kind of our target tenants are Evanston residents who live nearby, are seeking the lifestyle and connection of having an office in Evanston. It allows them to have a convenient office, that they have all the amenities where they can share the cost and not necessarily have to bring that into the house.
Can I ask a question while we have this slide up? So are we looking at the front of the building on the right there?
Yeah, the bottom right.
And so,
Do you want to see the next cell? The next.
okay, that's fine. That's great. So is the overhang on the upper skylight there, is that a further encroachment toward the property line than what exists now?
The overhang above the door,
Yes.
is that a further encroachment? That's in the public right away. That's over the property line.
It's over the property line. Okay.
And we went through that at Dapper, and it's permitted at its height,
Okay. Thanks.
correct? So the project, the project is really an adaptive reuse of the building. The area is, really considered part of downtown. It's really part of the walk-in neighborhood with a connection to the Dempster corridor. The location has a characteristics our clientele desire, benefits from having a mix of land use around it, clear and convenient transportation alternatives, and multiple public transportation hubs. If there's anything else, see if there's kind of a view of the area, if that helps you. But that concludes my presentation for now, and see if there's any comments.
I have a question. The business that you plan to run here, are the owners running this business?
Currently, we're planning to run the business, yes.
Running the business as well, okay. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak to this project? Sir, would you like to speak to the project? Please approach the microphone. State your name and address for the record, sir. Thank you.
Rick Brannon, 1413 Elmwood, which is kind of around the corner from this building. Just a clarification, isn't there already, they're asking for a zero front yard. Isn't it already zero front yard? Isn't it already zero?
Correct.
So why do you have to ask for?
So the way
Relief.
that works is the existing footprint is non-conforming.
Right.
And so in order to be able to build up, you need permission essentially for the add-on to also be non-conforming.
Oh, I see. Okay, because I didn't understand that. My only other question would be, where are these people going to park that are going to work here? Because it sounds like you're going to add 40 to 50 occupants in here? Because there's no parking in this area now. So I'm just wondering where people are going to park that work here.
Are you going to address that, Mr. David?
So our target market is more of a clientele. We see them using all modes of transportation. Inside the existing facility, we're going to have bike parking for them. I see them coming through public transportation as well as parking. So, I mean, we recognize that there's some parking issues in the neighborhood in South Downtown, but, you know, with the 40 desks, we see an average daily occupancy of about 20 people in the office, in that facility right now. Currently, Allegretti has, you know, had, when they're at their prime, there were three vans and had probably 5 or 6 employees inside there. So we see it as maybe a doubling in the amount of people there. And we see this clientele mostly arriving through a mix of uses.
That's theoretically.
Correct.
That's theoretically, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. My only other
I do
question
note, by the
is-
way, a lot of that street parking, because I go to that Leapfrog facility quite a bit, a lot of that street parking is limited to 2-hour parking, so people end up having to move their cars either
Right,
way.
and as a resident there, you have to have a permit to
Right.
park there.
Yeah, I mean, the area is challenged. I mean, there's a number of public parking garages in the area
Okay,
that customers will be
Yeah,
using.
I'm not saying it isn't possible, I'm just saying what, you know, forethought has gone into that, because you guys have already created a parking lot there for Leapfrog, and they are double parked in there as it is now, just the current Leapfrog employees for the building that's at, was that 807 Greenwood, is that the address? So if you're going to add another 30 to 40 people, you know, I'm just wondering where they're going to park.
If
The
I
other thing I'm
can-
wondering about is where's the construction, how's the construction traffic going to work during this project? Because when there was construction going on at the other building, construction trucks just pulled into the alley, stopped and parked there and blocked everybody's garages and whatnot, and it was unpleasant, to say the least. So I was wondering, is there
Well, I mean,
going
we'll-
to be some kind of management there of
Yes,
construction traffic?
We'll have, you know,
somewhat?
if we need to purchase the right-of-way, I know we'll have to purchase part of the right-of-way during the front facade construction and the Sherman Avenue construction. And if it's necessary to put traffic control up there and close Sherman Avenue during that period, we will. If not, we'll do our best to manage construction and relieve that.
So you would have
A lot of the work
to
is
close
interior.
Sherman Avenue?
For a period of time when we're doing the
So
masonry
then
work.
nobody could park on Sherman Avenue during
No,
that
I would
period?
just at the east side of our building.
Oh, okay, okay. Because I know a lot of residents park over there, especially in the evening.
I mean, it'll be
'cause it's
closed
open
during the day
parking.
while the mason, you know, I'll have to work that out with right away with June, how we
Okay.
manage that.
If I can just speak for a second to your concerns about the forethought with regard to the parking, that issue was actually addressed fairly extensively in the testimony that they provided before DAPR and various other zoning committees. And they are having one off-street parking space in the garage, and they are required, as a part of the accommodations, to provide bicycle parking inside. So there are a couple of co-working facilities on Chicago Avenue, close to Main Street, where there really is a dearth of parking as well, always has been. And truly, the majority of the clients who use the co-working facility on Chicago Avenue by Main Street come via the L or the Metra, or they're local. And that the entire reason they want the co-working space is because they have their home office, but they need a professional appearance on occasion, and that's why they go to the co-working facilities. So I think that this really is designed for very local people to come and use the facility on an hourly or weekly basis as they need. It has not, I think it's worked pretty well on Main Street, and I think that they did talk about that a lot. So people are aware, and, you know.
Well, I wasn't privy to any of the other, because these are the first
Sure.
official notices that we've gotten about the restoration for the building changing hands and whatnot. So I'm not privy to what it.
Sure.
You said some DAPR, I don't even
No,
know what that, is that an
the
acronym for
notes,
something?
The note, yeah, that's the Design and Appearance Review Committee in the city of Evanston.
Of course, that
And those
sounds
are the
dapper.
notes that we get before we come here, so that we are able to know that there has been a vetting of some of these issues that would be of concern to the residents in the immediate vicinity. So I just wanted you to know that the city has thought about that, and
Somebody's thinking about
they
it.
did, yeah, they did ask them, you know, some extensive questions on that front.
Because I had heard that this was going to be primarily rented to, additional rental to the Leapfrog Company, but apparently not.
Well, they noted that Leapfrog would be an overflow user of the space as well, which that makes sense, but that's...
Because I had heard Leapfrog was kind of running out of room where they are now, so I don't know. But, so, okay, well, that sounds
Growing
like that's up
businesses
in
in
the air too
Evanston
then.
is a good problem.
Could be.
Thank you,
Okay.
though, for bringing those issues up.
Thanks for listening.
Sir, you can find the
Anything else?
plans and all of the DAPR materials online under our agenda and packet.
Okay,
All right.
great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My name is Pam Heisig, and I live on 1403 Elmwood.
Could you say your name again, ma'am?
Pam Heisig.
Heisig, okay.
And my property is right across the alley from the Leapfrog property, which is adjacent to what they're proposing to build. And I believe 100 people or so work at Leapfrog, and there's parking for 9 cars. And I'm going to say that the 8 and 900 blocks of Greenwood, both sides, are filled with cars from 9 to 5, as is the 13 and 1400 block of Sherman, the 13 and 1400 block of Elmwood, and the 13 and 1400 block of Maple. If I move my car between 9 and 5, I don't have a spot. I can't have friends visit me, family visit me, tradespeople. Parking is horrible. Even though it's residential parking, every 2 hours, these people come out and move their car 10 feet in one direction or across the street. Parking is so bad that this year my street hasn't been cleaned at all, or all last year, because there's always errant cars around. The same thing with snow plowing. And the thought of even more people than 100 people hanging around my neighborhood all day long, frankly, it's intolerable now. This would even be more intolerable. Thank you.
Anyone else care to comment?
My name is Gaylan Emerzian, and I have the property at 1440 71st Street. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. I have the property at, God, I can't remember, what's my address, 1420? Okay, my property is 1419, thank you. Thank you. I'm a little nervous. My property is directly, my garage is open directly out into the Leapfrog Lee's parking lot behind me. And the Leapfrog folks have, basically they feel that that's their alley. Sometimes I cannot back out of my out of my garage. There's parties that go on in that area. I feel like having this other building to the north of that is going to cause more of that kind of appropriation of the alley. So that's one of my problems. The other problem is that the garbage, the way that garbage is handled at the first facility is that cardboard boxes that should be put into a recycling bin are shoved into the garbage cans, and they keep the lids up. So our alley is one of the alleys in Evanston that has a rat problem, because there's food in those things, and when the boxes are put in there, there is no way to keep the rats out. So there's that. And the other thing that I would like to take issue with is this is not downtown Evanston. It is on the other side of the tracks. It is in a residential area. And again, my thing is parking. It's like there is, we have apartment buildings across the street from us. We have condos across the street from us. There are a number of people. It's not just single-family residents. We already have a lot of people parking on our street. And I know that Lee has rented spaces for Leapfrog at the what was the Holiday Inn, and is now another. I'm sorry, it's a Holiday Inn again at their garage. But that parking is indeed an issue in our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just to address that, I think these are really great comments from the neighbors, and thank you all for coming in. Just to remind you, the scope of what we're here to decide tonight is whether or not to grant a variation to build straight up from the existing facade of the building. And I think the kinds of concerns you're raising are the exact kinds of concerns you should raise with your neighbor. And it is a residential neighborhood. As I said, I visit the Leapfrog property quite a bit. They're a client of mine, and I know what it's like to try to park on those streets. But this building is in a C2 commercial district, even though it neighbors on residential properties. And these are conversations that you should be having, especially about trash and litter and the problems that it causes, conversations to have with your neighbor and trying to resolve these things. But I do think they're good comments. They're just not exactly within the scope of what we're considering here tonight.
Doubling down on that, you have recourse to parking enforcement at the City of Evanston. If your alleyways are blocked, you have an issue, and you can call for parking enforcement. So it's something that is, though, as my colleague pointed out here, it's outside of our scope.
Okay, we're going to close the record so we can have a discussion. Any discussion on this project, committee? Are there further comments? Other people? Would the applicant like to sum up? Respond to anything?
I want to thank all our neighbors for coming out, and we did hear your comments, and we recognize, if there's a maintenance thing, I know you have Lee's phone number, and be sure to call us first before you see any further problem. We'll be happy to talk to our tenants too as well about the parking in the alley. Other than that, I want to thank everyone for their time, and I don't have any closing other comments.
Okay, committee.
And I just to comment further, I do appreciate the neighbors' comments, and they're not exactly within the scope, but I certainly would encourage the applicant, as the other neighbor in the equation, to try to work with your neighbors to make the construction flow smoothly and to make the operation of your property flow smoothly for your neighborhood. And other than that, this type of case is fairly routine for us as a board. I think most of the time when we're faced with existing non-conforming properties where an applicant seeks to legally build up and just needs the permission to do that, it seems like we routinely grant this type of request, and this project seems like a great repurposing of this existing property, and I don't see why our analysis in this case would be different.
I agree that it's a really nicely put together project. I know that there were times that Allegretti had large numbers of people coming to his warehouse, and so I think that there will be a flow of people in and out here. The repurposing of the building, by right, they could have really built up on this property, and they chose to do an adaptive reuse that is very much in scale with what was there, and just improving the appearance of it and repurposing it. So I think that based on what could have been done and what they chose to do, it will be an asset for Evanston, and I think it's a great project. Thank you.
I think that this project is certainly going to be an upgrade for this building. It's going to look much better over there. I have a question, Melissa. In C2, is a dumpster required for regular refuse collection?
It's not a zoning requirement. I believe there's a requirement that any occupied property have proper trash pickup.
Okay, so maybe you can address some of the questions of the neighbors like that, just to be a better neighbor. And everybody can be happy about this.
It's a well developed project, and I think it's I'm with this. I enjoy the presentation, and I think it's a great reuse of the property.
Okay, and with that, we're going to close the record and read the standards. The standards will be read by Myrna Alavana.
Standards for major variations, zoning ordinance section 63812, standards for major variations. Number 1, the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. I think this standard has been met, even though we've heard from neighbors regarding issues that they have, and they have voiced tonight. But I believe this standard has been met. The requested, number 2, the requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. I believe this standard has been met. The alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. This property already has the setbacks because it was the setbacks that it's requesting. It's only being built up. The footprint of the building is already intact the way it sits right now. So I believe this standard has been met. The property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguishing from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. As stated before, this property sits as is right now. It's not being changed footprint. It is only going up in height. Number 5, the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property or the public benefit is provided. There's nothing, it's a commercial property. Obviously, there will be income for this property. So I believe this standard has been met. Number 6, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. It's just being developed to create a better property and a better use for the property as it sits right now. So I believe standard 6 has been met. And number 7, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified before the Zoning Board of Appeals issues its decision or recommendation to the City Council regarding said variation. I believe that variation has been met.
Thank you, Myrna. Is there any further discussion?
I agree that all the standards have been met. I would just add with respect to the substantial adverse impact factor, the first standard, that it's not, that while there have been concerns about the impact the project may have on the neighborhood, none of them are tied to the requested variation, which is what the standard pertains to. And therefore, I think the standard is met with respect to the variation being requested.
I agree. Would someone like to make the motion?
I'll move in the matter ZBA 17 ZMJV-0044 that we determine to grant the major variation requested, subject to the condition that the property be developed in accordance with the testimony and documents submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Your variation has been granted. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. Is the respondent for 1018 Michigan Avenue here? Please approach the podium.
My name is Jeremy Brown. I live
Just a minute, sir. Melissa's going to read it into the record. Okay, just 1 minute.
Jeremy Brown and Carl Vogel, property owners, appeal the zoning administrator's decision to partially deny minor zoning relief, case number 17 ZMNV 0026, to construct a 3-car detached garage in the R1 single-family residential district. The applicant was granted minor zoning relief for a 22-foot by 22-foot 2-car detached garage for a maximum building lot coverage of 31%, where 30% is permitted, zoning code section 6827, but denied minor zoning relief for a 3-car detached garage with a requested 34% building lot coverage. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include appeal application submitted May 5th, 2017, standards form, minor variation application submitted March 28th, 2017, minor variation correspondence regarding comparable garages, staff findings of fact or standards of minor variation denial, zoning analysis, plat of survey, site plan, elevations, minor variation public notice, minor variation final determination notice, precedent research from appellant, letters of support, 6, aerial view of property, image of property, zoning map of property, and Preservation Commission meeting minutes excerpt of March 21st, 2017.
Thank you, Melissa. Sir, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jeremy Brown. I live at 1018 Michigan Avenue. Our plan is to demolish our existing 1-car garage that's falling apart and put up a 3-car garage in its place. You can see from the plans that were provided that it's not going to be 3 individual stalls, but a 2 and a single. So we need 3 more % to get the garage we're asking for. The garage, in our packet of nearby properties that we provided, our neighbors at 1021 Forest and 1014 Michigan built garages that were larger than what we're asking for, and were given much larger variances of 36% and 40%. Part of our practical difficulty is that we're already at 29% lot coverage, so any kind of addition or improvement to our home is going to put us over.
Why do you need a 3-car garage?
If you could see the back of our house, we have a horrible 1950s addition on the back of it that makes it impossible to put our bikes, our kayak, or any other types of personal property in the basement. So having that 3rd stall would allow me to store bikes, our lawn equipment.
When did you buy the house?
2008.
And was the existing garage single car garage there when you bought it?
Yes.
Okay. And so what do you do with that equipment now?
Part of it's in the yard. Part of it's at the neighbors. If I want to use any of that equipment, I have to pull my car out, park it out on the street out front in order to get stuff in and out. The current garage door is only 7.5 or 8 feet wide, so I can barely even get my own, I can barely get my car in as it is.
Clearly you need a new garage.
Yeah. So this is a case where, I have a space to put all of our personal belongings. We look across the alley and hey, they have that, I want that too. But part of the reason our neighbors are in favor of it is that, it would help our neighborhood out. It would help our street. Our street's very congested. Oftentimes, there isn't room to park out in front of our house because the 1 block south of us, there isn't sufficient parking for the condos and apartment buildings that are there. So they end up parking on our block instead. So I feel like it would be a benefit not only to our neighbors, but to the neighborhood itself to be able to remove all of our vehicles from the street out front.
Did I read in the packet correctly that you kind of have a long-term plan to get rid of that ugly 1950s addition?
We'd like to eventually.
Okay. And so if I read that correctly, if you got rid of that addition, then you wouldn't need a building lot coverage variance for your 3-car garage.
Correct.
So why wait?
Removing that addition and putting and replacing it with something smaller is a 6-figure project, and it's much cheaper for us to just get that extra, feet to get that 3rd stall and to have a place to store all of our belongings.
Did
Yeah,
I see
that-
also that you mentioned that you wanted to store strollers and various other items? So has your family grown since you moved into the house?
It has, yeah. We have twins now, and probably a 3rd on the way soon. So we want a safe place to be able to get them in and out of our vehicles. In an easier place to park. If you've got multiple kids, I don't want to be parking a block away to shuttle them to and from the house. Trying to think.
How many cars do you own?
2 currently, and we'll probably get a 3rd. And we'll have that space also for when the kids are older and they're driving as well.
You did a remarkable amount of homework in assessing almost every variance that has been granted in excess of 30% of lot coverage in the last, 12 years maybe.
More years.
More years than that. But also in your immediate neighborhood, that there are similar types of structures. And so, that's something that we'll be discussing after the fact. But I appreciate your sense of questioning why it would be granted to some and not to you. I think that the zoning administrators were trying to strike a balance by approving the 31% coverage on a 2-car garage. Why would that not be a kind of a happy medium for you, a reasonable compromise?
I've lived at houses before that have garages of that size, and it doesn't give you, beyond 2 cars, you can't get in the rest of your equipment. You're forced to either put it in, in your basement or in a shed out back, or this just seemed like an easier and cheaper way for us to help improve our property and the neighborhood as well.
Any other questions for this respondent?
So how about if you think in the future, these things are, let's say, both possible, and I'm thinking loudly. Let's say we, as good people, say, okay, we will allow him 3-car garage, but if he agrees to demolish or remodel part of the building in the future as a promise, which is very difficult for us because people change with time and owners change of properties. The other option will be if you take the granted 2-car garage and enlarge it in the future when you remodel the home and shorten or reduce the size of your addition of the building so that you fit in about 31% lot coverage. So is it possible for you to think that you can build now a 2-car garage, and let's say after some years when you remodel the home, you add a 1-car garage to it? This structurally and architecturally, it's absolutely possible, as you know, because you can easily add to something.
You're asking, can we just add the 3rd stall later? Once?
Yes. And how much later obviously depends on you because you're considering the needs of your family.
I think the cost would be considerably greater to add that third stall later. Plus, we would have to go through preservation again and probably be.
Yeah,
It would-
I know,
it would be
all
more-
the hassle, yeah.
More hoops, more time. Yeah, my fear is that the cost of ripping off that addition and replacing it is not within the budget, soon. I don't know. Maybe. That's what, when we bought the house, that's what we wanted to, that's what our intent was to do, but that's before estimates started coming in, so.
Thank you.
Any further comment?
I have comments. Maybe we should wrap up testimony and then take that up in deliberations.
Is there anyone else here who'd like to respond to this? Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Okay, we can close the record for deliberation.
Yes, so I am wondering, based on, again, the exhaustive research that the applicant has done in pointing out that this kind of relief has been granted on numerous occasions in the past. I don't know exactly what has changed. Arlova, saw Arlova's name on a lot of those. But that aside, there are a couple of things that I would like to say. One is there's a particular hardship that I don't think was mentioned in any of the deliberations, and that is the location of this house in the Lakeshore Historic District, as close to the lakefront as it is, and with a mix of high-density housing units and that make it a little bit more difficult to park and store equipment under the guidelines of both the Preservation Commission and just practically speaking. So that's one issue. And another issue that I think is valid for the applicant that he's brought up is that there is a public benefit. I've gone over there to try to walk to the lakefront, and it is hard to find parking. So the fact that they would take more vehicles off the street, I think, is not an insignificant public benefit. I bring those issues up because I think that they are worth consideration as we deliberate whether or not, we're the determining body here. So, I'm wondering if we couldn't perhaps condition an approval of their garage plan on commitment that, or I don't know if we can attach this to the property deed going forward, but that future additions cannot exceed the 34%. So if you take that little addition down, you're not going to be able to put up anything that is greater than that. But it does seem to me as though they're complying with the Preservation Commission. They got all of the approvals through preservation. They want this for the practical use of their family, and there have been numerous examples of this variance being granted in that particular neighborhood. So I'm struggling with denying this on those bases.
Those are all really good points, and actually I do commend all of the research. I think way more effort than anybody ever puts into these applications. That said, they're not precedent to the board. We don't have to follow them, meaning they're not precedent, meaning we don't have to follow them. And to your point, the lion's share, if not all of them, were written before this applicant even bought the house in 2008. And certainly before any of us was on the zoning board, I think my tenure being the longest tonight since 2009. I can say this zoning board, since I have been on it, has been particularly tough on lot coverage issues, and particularly when they involve garages. In the more recent history, I don't think the examples submitted with this application are representative of what I've seen in my 8 years on the board. I also have a problem with the precedent that it does create, that granting the application does create, is that it sets an example, it would set an example where anytime somebody would like to have a larger garage that increases their lot coverage, or a third car garage so that they can store non-cars in their garage, is not really what the zoning ordinance intended by wanting to have 2 cars per residential household, 2 cars of parking for a residential household. And I do think the zoning administrator's proposal of actually granting a variation above the 30% in order to accommodate a second garage is a very fair resolution here, and would allow the applicant to make choices of continuing to store their personal property the way they have since they've lived there since 2008, and parking 1 car on the street as they have since they've lived there since 2008, or using the 2 cars for parking as the zoning ordinance would intend. I know personally I would love to have another parking space so I could put another car in a garage, but I don't have that luxury, and I imagine most Evanstonians, or many of them, would line up if that was the precedent the board started creating when somebody would like to do that. I also do think the proposal, I don't know that it was really a proposal, but the comment that Kirill made resonated with me, which was, it is easy to add on to a project, and if a 2-car garage can be built now while this family has 2 cars and can accommodate the current need, then why not wait and add on a 3rd car at the point when they're also able to subtract from the existing lot coverage by removing the addition that's in their long-term plan in any event. So for all of those reasons, I don't believe the standards for a variation are met here, and my personal feeling is that we shouldn't grant the variation.
So, and I completely understand your thinking on this, needless to say. You don't believe that there is adequate public benefit in their taking their cars and all of their belongings off of their lawn and packaging it away to justify this.
I agree completely with you that there is a public benefit, just as there is a public benefit every time someone would ask for a 3rd car garage to pull one of their cars off of a street, any street in Evanston, and create more public parking. So I do think there's a benefit. I don't think that, certainly that's not, there's not a cost-benefit analysis that goes into whether the standards are met. That's not one of the standards we weigh. Is there a public benefit that outweighs all the rest of this? In my view.
Well, it is a it is a mitigating factor in our granting variances, and typically a major factor. I do have to say that if we apply the standards as they are written, the least amount that you can do to alleviate your hardship is what you should do. And I think that zoning did try to make the compromise to allow you a 2-car garage. At the end of the day, I would have to concur with Scott that as much as I would like to see you be able to have what you'd like to have and do what you want to do with your property, it does not meet the standards for the variance if we apply them. And even the strict application will create a terrible inconvenience for you. There is no question about it. But I have to say it's not going to create a hardship to only have 2-car garage as opposed to a 3. It will be more of an inconvenience.
I would agree. I just want to reiterate my agreement that with you, Mary, that I do think there's a public benefit to the variation being requested, but in my view, that it doesn't, and it is a mitigating factor for us from time to time, but in my view, this one is not near the gray line for where we would consider that factor.
I also concur. I have lived in this neighborhood, and I know how hard it is to park over there. It's almost impossible. There is a public benefit. However, the requirement of most properties in Evanston is that 2 parking spaces be required. And so I actually concur with the decision of the zoning administration, which is already a variance, more than what would be allowed, but not what you're asking for.
Well, I kind of have a wish that you did this site plan a little bit different and a little bit better, because the way that you present it to us and the way that it is developed, not that we're so strict, but we really care about certain other things like available area, green area, air, and so on and so on. I think that you could develop a site plan that is a little bit better showing and maybe even showing in perspective what will become with the building, and include the whole thing that you want to do in your property, including the 3-car garage, including the reducing of your addition. Even you can play with the sizes of the garage so that you can achieve your goal of 3-car garage. So, yeah, of course you can answer no matter that the record is closed, I believe, but this is what I would kind of recommend to everybody that wants to put a little bit more of a percentage of using the footprint than what a minor variation is agreeing with. So once again, like my colleagues, I'm debating inside between your real needs and between everything else that we very often discuss on this zoning board about this variation, and usually the minor variations are less than what you require, what you request at the moment. Well, he wanted to answer something of my comments. I don't know if you would allow it.
Well, I really can't let you respond, sir, because we closed the record, unless someone wants the motion to reopen the record to hear what he has to say.
I would motion that the applicant be able to respond.
Second. Okay with everyone? Please.
I thought I would maybe have an opportunity to talk about options that we, could come up together to gain approval, such as, if the issue was like rainwater, we could talk about rain barrels, or I have a site plan I can present a smaller 3-car garage that my architect already drew up. If the current plan, if you're denying the current one, I have a smaller version I can present to the board.
At this hearing or withdraw? Okay, if you'd like to present it.
Okay.
We can. The question was, can we consider this? So you guys can, as part of the appeal process, the zoning board does have the authority to grant any eligible variation. So if the new plan is for a different version of the garage and essentially nothing else on the property is changing, then I can work out the numbers while you guys are discussing, and if you choose to go that route, I can tell you exactly what the permitted building lot coverage would be.
It's,
That would not have to then be re-reviewed by preservation and/or zoning?
Or staff?
By zoning, it would be fine then. By preservation, that would be up to our preservation coordinator to look and see how.
Well, we should be able to operate on the presumption that if they approved a 34% coverage, they would approve a smaller percentage coverage that was substantially the same in design.
That was the determination made by the preservation coordinator in the minor variation process when we went down to the 31% garage. So I would believe so, but we would still double check. Alternatively,
I thought that was the 34%. That preservation actually approved the 34%.
it was, the preservation coordinator is part of the team that reviews minor variations, and he felt that a smaller design of the garage could still keep the same essential design elements to meet the preservation review. So he felt it would not need to go back to the committee.
Okay.
Alternatively, if you guys are not comfortable with that, you can always choose to continue the case and either ask the applicant to return to preservation to have a new plan reviewed, or just to provide more time for you guys to think about the new plan and for staff to do a full zoning analysis if you choose.
What's the wish of the committee?
I have a tendency to want to move things forward. If the rest of my colleagues are in agreement with this, I don't want to force anything, but, this is the time when people get things done and zoning applications are already backed up, and maybe we can take a little bit of extra time and try to conclude this.
Can we see the plan before we make that decision? So this will be Exhibit 1? Okay.
Have you done your own analysis what the lot coverage by this revised smaller garage would be, and what you're asking in view of a
would-
smaller request?
it would shrink from 34% to 32%, 32.4.
Can I just ask, if your architect drew up the smaller garage and you're willing to live with that, why didn't you present that in the first place tonight?
This is the smallest I believe we can possibly go for a 3-car.
But one of the standards we're supposed to consider is it the least deviation necessary from the applicable zoning ordinance? And you've seen those standards, so why did we spend the better part of a half hour considering a plan that you're presenting something different to us that you're willing to accommodate?
I had him type this up for me after I had already submitted all of my...
Tonight, I mean.
Well, it was already on the docket as it was. So, and I think that, once again, based on all of the research that he had done, it was, he was considering precedent from before, even though, as you rightly point out, we don't have to take previous cases as precedent setting. So, I can understand that he felt as though documents were submitted as they were, maybe under consideration, we would approve those.
Okay, sir, give us one moment so we can do the math. Thank you.
So I guess, Melissa, I don't really understand how this would not have to go back to zoning. If zoning approved, or that was just a staff recommendation, it's up to us to decide whether this is something that we could.
This is an appeal, so it was a denial and an appeal.
Okay.
Correct. So if if you guys are favorable to this plan, I can figure out and confirm that it's the 32%, and then you can motion to approve it at exactly that amount based on the plan submitted.
Yep.
Did you have comments? I thought you were about to say something.
No, I'm okay with this.
Yeah, I think that that the applicant has worked.
Yeah.
You know, this is a hard case again. People work really hard to make use of their property that they bought, that they're trying to accommodate their family, and they come upon these, oh my gosh, what? We can't build this garage that we want. They have researched this exhaustively. They've gone through a huge process. They've gone before preservation. They've worked hard with the zoning administrators. They have come up now with their version of a compromise, and I think that this, what did you come up with, Melissa, there?
I found that the new proposal is a reduction in square footage of 134 square feet, so the new building lot coverage would be 32.2%.
So my feeling is that on 1.2% over the compromise that the zoning staff came up with is a fairly reasonable compromise. I would be inclined to grant this proposal. I think that they've worked really hard to meet the requirements, and that it is a pretty minimal overage beyond what is allowable, and certainly it is consistent with what we see in the Lakeshore Historic District. So it's not as though, the other factor, once again, I think there's public benefit, and I think that there has been an inordinate amount of support from the neighbors as well. So it does not impact people. Is it the very least that can be done? Perhaps not, but I think that they have worked really hard to make it the least that can be done and still accommodate the needs of their family. I would vote to allow this.
I agree.
I respectfully disagree. I still don't think it meets the requirements for minor variation, and I don't think it's the least deviation from the applicable possibilities that have been identified. I don't think a family in Evanston needs a 3-car garage, and I don't think that's what the comprehensive general plan provides for. I think it's something people would like to have, and in this case, the family has been living in their property for 8 years or 9 years with a 1-car garage and has gotten by. And the deviation that staff has proposed, which is over the lot coverage and still would require us to grant a variation, is for a 2-car garage, which increases twofold the amount of space they currently have for parking, and in my view is the least deviation necessary.
Are there any further comments from the committee? Okay, I'm going to officially close the record again, and Scott is going to read the standards. Hold on just a second.
All right, the standards for considering a minor variation, which is what we're considering on appeal tonight. Standard 1, the practical difficulty is not self-created. I believe this standard has been met. This is a home that was purchased in 2008 with a single-car garage and the property, the lot coverage at 29.x%, and so the practical difficulty was not created by this owner. Standard number 2, the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. I believe this standard has been met. The neighbors, in fact, seem to support the project. Standard number 3, the requested variation is in keeping with the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance. I don't believe this standard has been met. I believe the comprehensive general plan and zoning ordinance provide for Evanston homes to have 2 spaces of parking, and I believe this requested variation is not consistent with that.
If I may respectfully disagree, under the circumstances, I think that because the comprehensive plan also comprehends that families' needs will change and that there are sometimes hardships because of location, that there are sometimes needs for families to alter their properties to meet their families' needs. That's why they come to us for variances, and because they have demonstrated that they have a need and that there's public benefit, I think that standard has been met.
Any other comments on that standard? Standard number 4, the requested variation is consistent with the preservation policies set forth in the comprehensive general plan. I don't agree that this standard has been met either. In terms of preservation policies, we're discussed that the variation we're requesting specifically deals with lot coverage, and there were alternative proposals put forth, including the removal of existing lot coverage through the addition in the back, for which there's a long-term plan to get rid of it. And the applicant has rejected that path for now. And therefore, I don't believe the variation is consistent with the preservation policies set forth in the plan.
Excuse me, I would simply point out that they went before preservation, and the Preservation Committee found that they gave them a certificate of acceptability for the plan with 34% coverage. I think recognizing that in that particular neighborhood, that is very much the norm, and that it does not detract from the Lakeshore Historic District look and feel, and in fact, removal of cars from the street might aid in that.
I also agree with Mary that preservation has reviewed this proposal and approved it. And while that's not, preservation is not usually our purview, I do appreciate your comments on preservation.
Standard number 5, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified before the zoning administrator when he issued his decision regarding said variation. At this point, I would remind that the variation we're discussing is the revised variation that would put the lot coverage at 32.2% rather than the 34% that was initially submitted with the application. That being said, in my view, this standard has not been met because the zoning administrator determined that the least deviation possible, which also would give an excess of lot coverage above what is allowed, would be at 31%, and it would accommodate a two-car garage, which represents a doubling of the existing garage parking that this family has used for the past 9 years. So in my view, this standard has not been met.
Well, I have a comment on that. I would partially agree with you, Scott, because that's true. Although, once again, this is a process, and I agree that this was not in front of the zoning administrator when he made his decision. Now there is a new proposal, and we see the reduction in areas. So to guess what would be the zoning administrator's decision in this case is, I would say, hard to predict, and it's not good to go forth and back. So on this variation, I would say that if we think about the three-car garage that we talked in the previous standards, this is the least three-car garage. So this is the least deviation with the current conditions that we see tonight. That's my point.
It's not, however, it's not the least deviation among the feasible options identified before the zoning administrator,
Correct.
which is what the standard deals with.
Yeah,
and in thinking
why I
through,
mentioned that it's a process, and that's why I am a little bit hesitant which prevails.
and in
Well,
thinking through this factor, I also come back to not just this applicant, but every other applicant that will come in front of the zoning board after this that says, I want a three-car garage too. Why can't I get my 1 or 2 or 3% to build it? And that's why I believe we need to be stricter about this standard.
I would simply say, and I understand certainly your reasoning, Scott. I think, though, to Carol's point, the least deviation presented to zoning, this was not one of the options that was presented to zoning. For the three-car garage, this is the smallest, the least deviation. And you know, I have a real problem saying that it's up to us to decide whether somebody is reasonable or not reasonable to want a three-car garage over a two-car garage. They have needs that they've identified for this. They have also identified areas where they hope to reduce the footprint of the house in the future, and hopefully that happens. But I believe that for them to achieve on their property what they have presented, going through preservation for the needs of their family, that this is the least deviation. And I think that it is, that's why they come before us, and because we do have some discretion, and it is on a case-by-case basis. And I don't think that this creates a precedent that we have to apply to every place, but houses in the Lakeshore Historic District where parking is a problem, where there are many similar properties with larger garages. I think they've worked really hard to bring the least deviation to achieve what they need for their family. So I would still say that that standard has been met.
I still disagree, but I respect your opinion.
I would like to know if the zoning administrator would like to comment on the plan that has been presented here tonight as Exhibit 1.
Thank you, Scott Mangum, Planning and Zoning Administrator. Thank you, Madam Chair and Board. Just taking a quick look at the plan here, again, it is a three-car garage that's being proposed, whereas the zoning code requires a minimum of 2 parking spaces for a single-family dwelling. So that was the rationale in previously denying or partially denying the variation for the previous three-car garage. That would likely be the same analysis here.
Even considering the new lot coverage, the new percentage.
Correct. I think the rationale was about the code requirement for parking being the 2, and what's being requested is in excess of the code requirement.
Okay, so your decision was based on the code requirement.
Correct.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for the zoning administrator on that? Okay. Would anyone like to make this motion? Just a second, Mary.
I will preface this with 4 concurrent votes are needed in order to close a case. So if there is a split decision and there are not 4 concurrent votes, either for or against, then your case will continue to the next meeting with testimony closed, just for any absent members to vote on the case.
I have another question. Because this is a new proposal that the applicant has brought, does the applicant have the option of saying, vote on the old plan and going back to the administrator and presenting this plan and seeing if this can go through? As opposed to, I one way or the other, we can reject this new plan, or we can reject the old plan, which I think then leaves them at least open to presenting the new plan to zoning. Although, do you understand what I'm saying? It's a distinction. What are we going to be voting on, the old plan or the new plan? Because
I actually think it's a good question, and I'm not sure as a matter of procedure whether we should be on appeal, which the issue on an appeal is, did the zoning administrator get it right? I don't know that on appeal we should be considering a new proposal at all in deciding, did the zoning administrator get it right, as opposed to if this were coming to the zoning board for a decision on whether a variation should be granted or not. That's not what's at issue. The issue on an appeal is, did the zoning administrator make the right decision?
I agree.
You have the authority to grant any version of the variation. That being said, if you are not comfortable with it, then if you were to deny the original appeal, then the applicant could proceed through a new minor variation process with a proposal, so long as it is not the exact same proposal as last time. However, we did hear from the zoning administrator and his thoughts on that proposal, so that could end up right back here again.
And on the other hand, we could approve this evening also, because I want to get clear the options of what we can vote on. We can also, tell me if I'm wrong, elect to approve the variance that the zoning administrator found was acceptable with the 31% coverage, or that's already been granted.
You can uphold the zoning administrator's determination, you can grant the original minor variation, or you can grant anything in between, such as the current proposal.
I think what Mary may be asking is the zoning administrator's decision that we may or may not be upholding that 31% would be permitted here? Or would we need to affirmatively decide that ourselves? Is that what you were-
So if we did nothing, the zoning administrator has already given this applicant permission to build to 31%. Is that correct? And all we're considering is the appeal here.
Correct.
Okay.
If I may comment further to the board, I feel if we uphold the zoning administrator's decision and this applicant is permitted to build to 31%, it still allows the applicant to make choices now or in the future about how they want to use that excessive lot coverage. They could build a 2-car garage now and build onto it in 5 years when they remove other lot coverage. or they could build a two-car garage now and not remove their addition some years from now. And it's still an overage of what the zoning ordinance permits. So that's my additional 2 cents, putting me at like $1.50.
Okay, so would anyone like to make any of those proposed motions?
I think before we decide what a motion is, it might, having discussed the standards, it might benefit to straw poll where people are, because I don't know that everybody weighed in on whether they think the standards on a 32.2% proposal are met or not, other than Mary and I.
I thought that the vote was, are we upholding the zoning administrator's position?
I think that Scott was looking for the thoughts of the other board members on whether the standards had been met or not on a 32.2% coverage of the lot.
If we all agree, or if enough of us agree that it's not, then I would make an affirmative decision to uphold the zoning administrator's decision, which is my position. But if it seemed like the rest of the group feels that a 32.2% variation would be fine, then somebody should make a different motion than
Then I would
me.
move to approve the 32.2% coverage for the applicant and let people vote on that.
I'll second that.
What's that?
Not a motion yet.
Okay, well, I think that I don't have the number of the case in front of me. All right, in the case of ZBA 17Z MJV-0038 for 1018 Michigan Avenue, I would motion to approve the revised plan that the applicant submitted to have a reduced size 3-car garage resulting in a total lot coverage of 32.2% of the lot, provided that the building would take place in compliance with the documents that have been presented, the revised documents that were presented as Exhibit A this evening.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
With a vote of 3-2 in favor, the case will continue to our next meeting, which is July 11th. You are welcome to attend. You don't have to, since testimony is closed and it is broadcast on TV, but it will be the first order of business, and the remaining members will simply make their votes.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here for 1027 Sherman Avenue? Okay.
Good evening, Catherine Bills, attorney for 1027 Sherman Avenue, LLC.
Okay, just a minute. I'm going to have Melissa read it into the record.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Catherine G. Bills, attorney, applies for major zoning relief to expand an office use and construct new exterior stairs in the R3 two-family residential district. The applicant proposes to expand a legally nonconforming use in a legally nonconforming structure previously approved in Ordinance 102-091 that includes a condition limiting the use of the storefronts for youth counseling offices only, where the expansion of a legally nonconforming use in a legally nonconforming structure is not permitted. Zoning Code Section 6645A. A 5-foot north interior side yard setback for an exterior stair more than 4 feet above grade, yard obstruction, where 13.5 feet is required, Zoning Code Section 6419B1, and a 10-foot south interior side yard setback for an exterior stair more than 4 feet above grade, yard obstruction, where 13.5 feet is required, Zoning Code Section 6419B1. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include variation application submitted May 25th, 2017, standards form, zoning analysis, Ordinance 102-091, plat of survey, site plans, floor plans, elevations, 2 letters of support, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, and Dapper meeting minutes excerpt of June 7th, 2017.
Thank you, Melissa. Now, please, ma'am.
Good evening again. Catherine Bills, attorney for the applicant. Also here is Robert Fisher, principal and manager of the applicant, and Rod Kelly, my client's architect, for any more technical questions you may have regarding the site plan. My client is proposing a remodel of the existing structure to improve the safety, condition, and aesthetic of the building for use as a small office building with a small showroom in the front storeroom area. Given that for the past 26 years, the structure has been used as youth counseling offices, my client's proposed use would actually have less of an impact on the neighborhood in terms of traffic and disturbance from visitors and guests. Specifically, we're requesting a variance for the expansion of a non-conforming use. As I just said, for the past 26 years, it's zoned as R3, but there was an ordinance allowing it to be used as a youth counseling center and offices in connection with those youth counseling centers. We're requesting a variation to operate an office that would house between 10 to 12 employees at a time and a small showroom at the front of the structure. I am not well at technology, so I could not figure out how to get this to use it. But if you see a picture of the structure from the outside, it's commercial in nature. It's not residential. Currently, as I just said, it's zoned as R3, but it hasn't been used for R3 compliant purposes in over 26 years. So it's not built for R3 purposes. It's not safe to be used for R3 purposes right now. So without the zoning relief, my client would have to go through huge remodeling, and instead of keeping it consistent with how it's already been used for the past 26 years at least. We're also requesting a variance for the setback requirements for the proposed north and south exterior staircases. As a preface, the structure is really 2 buildings, a 2-story brick and a 2-story frame that are sort of merged together. The result is that inside the structure, in the area where those 2 structures connect, it's not easily navigable. So my client is proposing putting code-compliant staircases for emergency egress for safety reasons because of that. Currently, there's a non-code compliant staircase there, and we also want to bring that up to date. So if you have any specific questions, we're happy to answer them.
Hi, my first question, when I went out to the site, I did notice that to the north, there's an empty lot with a fence around it. Do you own that or have an option on that?
No.
No, that's not a part of this proposal?
No.
Okay. You can speak, sir, if you like. You can use this microphone. You can step up to that one.
I just want to introduce myself. My name is Robert Fisher. I own 1027 Sherman Avenue, LLC. I also am the owner of a long-term business that is at 1001 Sherman Avenue. I'm third-generation owner and operator of Evanston Lumber. And obviously I'm not sure it's obvious, but our intention is to put office space in the old YOU building, which is at 1027.
Okay.
So.
Questions from the committee?
This is not really related to your application, but did all of those LLCs, which are really owned by you, write letters of recommendation for you?
No.
Oh, no? I thought that...
There was only one letter drafted. I'd like to clarify.
No, I
wrote that letter was sent to the neighbors, the surrounding neighbors.
No, I can't imagine.
You wrote a letter of support.
Evanston Lumber has been a neighbor in that, has been a solid neighbor there for so long. I can't imagine that there would be any problem with it from the neighbors. But I just noted that a property owner who owned a number of properties also wrote a letter of recommendation.
And it was my,
Yes.
Right, that was all you guys. But that's okay.
Sir, you said you would have a showroom at this location?
Correct.
What are your hours of operation?
The hours of that showroom would be,
Could you step to the microphone so we can pick you up on the camera? Thank you.
the hours would be our hours, which is our 7 to 4 on the weekdays. And currently, we don't have any weekend hours or night hours.
At your current location or at this new location?
I have no intention at this stage.
Okay. Would there be additional employees? You're going to use your same office staff?
Correct.
Right. Parking in the same way?
Correct.
Right, okay. Any other questions?
What exactly is the proposed expansion of use that we're considering? Is it just related to the 91 grant for YOU
Yes.
to use it for counseling?
Yes.
And so we're theoretically permitting it to be used for office use?
Correct.
Any other questions? You guys still with me? Okay, great. Would you like to sum up your testimony?
As Mr. Fisher said, Evanston Lumber is a longstanding member of the neighborhood, and, you know, as the same principle as 1027 Sherman Avenue LLC, we really hope to look forward to putting the property back to productive use, updating the property, updating the look of it, and making it really more of a safe structure. That's our goal here tonight.
Okay. Thank you. You can have a seat. We're going to close the record for our own deliberation. Okay, committee.
To me, this seems pretty easy. The expansion of use is necessary in order for this property to have any use other than for counseling. And so it allows a existing non-conforming use to be expanded in a way that would allow a long-standing Evanston business to continue to exist and expand in Evanston, which I think is something we should be encouraging generally. And certainly the accessory stairs that require variation to me seem like a safety issue, and the zoning administrator has recommended that that be granted, and I don't pretend to know more than the zoning administrator on things such as that, so I think to me it seems like a good idea.
I agree with you, Scott. I visited the site and the stairwells. They do look like a safety issue, and I would agree that they need to be redone, probably in the manner that you proposed in this proposal. Thank you. Anyone else?
I would support the project, yeah. It's a good project. It has to go through.
I agree.
Okay. Then I am going to move on to reading the standards for a major variation. The purpose of a variation is to relieve a particular hardship or practical difficulty that the regulations of the zoning ordinance may impose upon the landowner because of the special or peculiar characteristics of the property that make compliance with the zoning ordinance difficult or impossible. Standards for major variations. Number 1, the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. I believe that that standard has been met. Number 2, the requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. Since this property has gone back and forth and has most recently for 26 years been used as commercial, I agree that that standard has been met. Number 3, the alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. Since the property will be having to go through adaptive reuse in order to become a successful part of the community again, I believe that this standard has been met. Number 4, the property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. I believe that if this building was not rehabbed and the stairs were not built in accordance with the testimony, that it would be a hardship and you would not be able to conduct your business there. So I believe that this standard has been met. Number 5, the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property or a public benefit is provided. I certainly see Evanston Lumber and their steady presence in the community as a public benefit, so I believe that this standard has been met. The number 6, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. I believe that the building's difficulties and hardships came from the previous use, so I also believe that in changing this, the standard would have been met. Number 7, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified before the Zoning Board of Appeals issues its decision or recommendation to the City Council regarding said variation. I believe this is a reasonable and least deviation from the regulation, so I believe that this standard has been met. Do we all concur?
Yes.
Yes.
Can someone please make the motion?
I move in the matter ZBA 17-ZMJV-0046 regarding the property at 1027 Sherman Avenue that we grant the major zoning relief requested with respect to an expanded office use and with respect to the setbacks requested, subject to the condition that the property be developed in accordance with the evidence and testimony submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Your variance has been granted. Thank you. Okay, are there applicants here for 1630 Chicago Avenue? Since you were not present at the beginning of the meeting, I am going to swear you in so that you can speak to this. Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you will provide in connection with this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. Melissa, could you read this into the record? Would you please step to the podium, whoever's speaking?
Matthew Schoner, project coordinator, applies for a special use permit for a Type 2 restaurant, Pono Ono Poke, at 1630 Chicago Avenue. 1630 Chicago Avenue is located in the D3 Downtown Core Development District, which requires a special use permit for a Type 2 restaurant to operate, Zoning Code Section 61143. The Zoning Board of Appeals makes a recommendation to City Council, the determining body for this case. Documents included as part of the record include special use application submitted May 30th, 2017, standards form, plat of survey, business summary, sustainability practices worksheet submitted June 5th, 2017, interior site plan, image of property, aerial view of property, zoning map of property, and Dapper draft meeting minutes excerpt of June 14th, 2017.
Thank you, Melissa. Will you please say your name and addresses for the record?
Sure. Matthew Schoner at 1630 Chicago Avenue, Evanston.
Okay. Are you speaking as well?
I believe.
Yes.
If you need me to. Jack DeMar, 1630 Chicago Avenue.
Thank you.
This is Jack, the owner of the restaurant.
Okay, thank you.
We also have supplementary documents, if I can hand these up to you.
You could do that, and we'll mark that as Exhibit 1. Could you speak into the microphone from now on?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
The packet,
Would you like to describe your project?
Sure, of course.
Great, thank you.
The packet we just handed you is what we call a design package 2. So it's the development of the project, interior, exterior. Basically, I'd like to kick it off with Jack. He'll tell you a little bit about the business operations of the project, and then I'll go into more about the work being done to the current property and what we're envisioning it.
Thank you.
So it's a basic fast casual concept, really small focused menu. We'll be doing poke bowls, which are more kind of becoming more popular. You may have seen one. There's one over just around the corner. They're basically sushi bowls. We'll also be doing fresh pressed juices. We're going to be open from 11 to 8. The main idea is to have kind of a lot of quick in and out business, people taking to go. There will be plenty of seating space. We have 49 seats available. No wait service. You'll order at a counter. You'll take your bowl to the seat. You'll eat and you'll go. We have a cleaning staff to come by the tables and clean every once in a while. No alcohol will be served. No service staff. Pretty simple, basic concept.
How many employees will you have?
So we might have about 10 on payroll, but no more than 7 at a time working.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Where will they park?
So there's a couple different options. Right now we're in negotiations with the landlord about providing parking in their adjacent garage. Everyone that works in the building right now parks there, and the garage is almost never full. Right now the building manager's out of town, so we haven't been able to correspond super promptly with them, but they're looking into it. We also have parking up the street. I know we're not allowed to park on that street, but there are several garages in the area.
Okay.
Just to expand on that a little bit, there are 2 lots on Chicago Avenue, about 500 feet to the north, and they're paid lots. And then there's additional street parking, paid meters in the area. And then just to expand upon the existing building space, right now it was a flower shop, and right now it exists as interior partitions and a few decorative elements. Nothing structural will be removed. So we'll be demoing those partitions and building out the space. For the exterior, no finish application on the exterior material or exterior walls will be done. It's basically just a few awnings, some signage, a menu board, including in that signage, and then that's it for exterior work.
So just to go back to parking for a minute, most of the time, if not all the time, that we recommend special uses be granted, we usually recommend they come with a condition that employees not use metered parking on the streets. Would you be fine with that condition if we were to include it?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
Can you talk about the hours of operation?
So from right now, we're looking at 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week.
Is this your first foray into opening and operating a restaurant?
I've worked in restaurants since I was 15. This is my first opening. I've opened other restaurants, not as an owner. I've reconcepted my family's restaurant, but this will be my first at the helm, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Garbage.
So garbage pickup is 7 days a week. The building has dumpsters about 10, 15 feet from our back door. Easily accessible. There's regular garbage and recycling. We'll be utilizing both.
Do you have something specific in the waste that may provoke some nuisance of bugs, of other?
Hopefully not. The building has its garbage picked up 7 days a week, so shouldn't be an issue.
What deliveries will you need, and when will they take place, and how will they take place?
Sure. So in a similar area as the dumpsters are, there's like an area where we can have deliveries pull up. It's a similar distance from our back door. I've confirmed with the building management that we can use that space. So they'll pull in from a back alley. It won't be from the front, from Chicago Avenue.
At what times will that take place?
I can't specify the exact times quite yet, but ideally morning time. That's when we'll get our food in and be able to prep for the day.
Will you do food deliveries out?
We have no plans to at this point.
Okay.
How many times a week will you have deliveries for your produce, for your?
We'll probably have about 3 to 4 days a week we'll be receiving deliveries. I can't speak to that exactly because we don't have the orders placed and we don't know the routes and schedules of the delivery drivers, but.
But your hours of operation are from 11 to 8. What time would the deliveries be? Early morning, so that means that you'd be opening up at what time?
So there'll be a cook or a head chef there around 8:30 or 9 in the morning to be prepping and preparing for the day, so they could receive deliveries at that point.
Okay.
Okay, being that this is Chicago Avenue and a very busy street, I see that Dapper has required that you specify a delivery location as a condition of approval of the special use ordinance. So you are saying that it would specifically be where?
If you look on the plan page on the design package we just gave you, it's on page 5. There is a rear door from our space to the exterior, and that door will be the delivery entrance. And that expels right to a private drive, and that's where the deliveries will take place.
The private drive that you refer to is on the south side of the building?
Correct.
Okay. So when I look at this floor plan, it seems like all of your business is actually up front, so you have to walk down a hallway to get your deliveries? Is that what you plan?
That's correct.
So the trucks will pull up to the back of the building, what did you say, 3 times a week?
Yeah, 3 or 4 times a week.
3 or 4 times a week. And during what times?
Morning hours, hopefully.
Morning hours. Try to make it morning hours. We're going to put that in the
Sure.
special use.
Best for me, too.
Okay, and go down this hallway to your restaurant kitchen.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Would you like to wrap up your testimony? Do you have anything else to say? Would you like to speak, sir? Could you come up and just so we can hear you and have you on tape, sir? And state your name and address.
My name's David Nash. I'm an associate with Arya Group Architects. Matthew works for our company. I'm here observing, seeing how he does, just kind of seeing to make sure that everything is okay for him and answer any questions that you might have. I'll just stand in the back and observe for now.
If I may just say, the design packet is really lovely. It makes me really interested now to see the interior of the restaurant. I like a lot of the elements, so far so good, Matt.
Thank you, Mary.
He thinks so, too.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for your testimony. You may be seated. I'm going to close the record, and we will read the standards, go into deliberation first. Okay, committee, any questions about this? You want to say anything about it? I think it's a great business. I like that there's not an empty storefront there. With the developments that have been going on in Chicago Avenue in that area, it'll fit in well.
I agree with you completely. I think that it's a really good use for that space, and I really like the design elements, and it's a nice, clean concept, and, no alcohol, no fuss, no muss. I think it's a really great project.
I concur.
I agree. And I think Matthew should be commended.
He did very well. Kira.
Give him a raise.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read the standards for special use now. Special uses are uses that, because of their potential adverse impact on the immediate neighborhood and the city as a whole, require a greater degree of scrutiny and review of site characteristics and impacts to determine their suitability in a given location. As such, the determination of special use as appropriate should be contingent upon their meeting a set of specific standards and the weighing in each case of the public need and benefit against the local impact, giving effect to the proposals of the applicant for ameliorating adverse impacts through special site planning and development techniques and contributions to the provisions of public improvement sites, right-of-ways, and services. I will read the standards for the special use. Number 1, the required special use is one of the special uses listed in the zoning ordinance. This restaurant type 2 is one of the special uses listed in the zoning ordinance. Number 2, the required special use is in keeping with the purposes and policies of the comprehensive general plan and the zoning ordinance as amended from time to time. This standard has been met because the comprehensive general plan allows for businesses in this location. Number 3, the requested special use will not cause a negative cumulative effect when its effect is considered in conjunction with the cumulative effect of various special uses of all types on the immediate neighborhood and the effect of the proposed type of special use upon the city as a whole. I think this standard has also been met. Number 4, the requested special use does not interfere with or diminish the value of the property in the neighborhood. I think this business will be an asset to the neighborhood. I believe this standard has been met. Number 5, the requested special use can be adequately served by public facilities and services as long as you comply with the parking as noted in your testimony and the litter collection and the deliveries as noted in your testimony. I believe this standard has been met. The requested special use does not cause undue traffic congestion. If deliveries are in the back and your food deliveries are in the back, I believe this standard will have been met. Number 7, this requested special use preserves significant historical and architectural resources. I think that standard is not applicable. Number 8, the requested special use preserves significant natural and environmental features. I also believe this standard is not applicable. Number 9, the requested special use complies with all other applicable regulations of the district in which it is located and other applicable ordinances, except to the extent such regulations have been modified through the plan development process or the grant of a variation. I believe that standard also has been met. Do we concur?
Yes.
Will somebody please make the motion?
I move in the matter ZBA 17 ZMJV-0047 with respect to the property at 1630 Chicago Avenue that we recommend that City Council grant the special use for a Type 2 restaurant that's been requested, subject to the following conditions. 1, that the hours of operation be limited from 6 a.m. till midnight. 2, that the business's employees be prohibited from using metered parking on the streets or other street parking. 3, that the applicant seems to be aware of the garbage collection processes for the building, but that the applicant review and comply with the city's garbage and litter collection plans. And 4, that the property otherwise be developed and used in accordance with the testimony and evidence submitted, including with respect to the delivery of, with deliveries taking place in the rear of the property and in morning hours to the extent possible.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, sir. Your special use ordinance has been granted.
It's been recommended to City Council.
Well, we're recommending you. Okay. Is there any other business?
Just a few things to note. We do have the CMAP workshop on June 27th, next Tuesday at 5 o'clock? Really? At 5 o'clock? Hope to see everyone there. I think only 2 of you confirmed at this point, so if you're not planning to attend, please think about it. And then we do have our additional ZBA hearing on July 11th, and then after that, we are back to our regular schedule.
Okay.
I move that we adjourn.
I second that.
Aye.
Aye.